Let's go now to James Sample, a constitutional law professor from Hofstra School of Law. Professor Sample, Jim, thank you so much for being with us. You always help us understand all of this even better. Your reaction today to the indictment, to the plea.
Well, thank you, Dana, and thank you, Marcia. It's good to be here. The reaction, my reaction is that this is staggering in scope relative to the staggering lightning speed of the investigation. I mean, to think about Election Day back in November to now is almost on the button 6 months. And to get this vast and this detailed of an indictment in that time frame is really incredible. You know, financial crime cases take a long time to put together. They're not, you know, this is the furthest thing in the world from surveillance video at a convenience store catching a person in the act. This takes a lot of connecting the dots and unpacking the Orwellian names of organizations and where them following the money and all of that. It's very hard to put together a case like this. And so that tells me that the prosecutors here, to be able to put this together this quickly, feel that they have overwhelming evidence to reach a conviction eventually against George Santos.
But Professor, doesn't this really speak to the point that they found a lot of witnesses who were willing to provide information in the grand jury, whether it was people who donated money to him or people who made the calls asking for the money?
I think it does, Marcia. And the indictment clearly it doesn't reference their names. It refers to them as individual number one, individual number two, et cetera. There has been some reporting that identifies those individuals. One, a wealthy Long Island businessman who owns a number of car dealerships, and another, a wealthy investor. Those seem to be the two individuals who made those $25,000 contributions to what was, in essence, alleged by Santos and by his operatives to be a campaign organization that, as you said, was going to run advertisements in support of a Santos campaign. And instead, it was actually not even organized as that kind of an organization. It was not a 501c4. It was not a 527. It was just an LLC in the name of George Santos, and he then converted those funds for his own personal purposes. At least that's what's alleged.
But are you surprised that these people who contributed to his campaign, who were allegedly key supporters, were so willing to testify about what had happened?
Well, if in fact what is alleged in the complaint did happen, what is alleged in the indictment did happen, Marcia, I'm not surprised, because in essence, the complaint alleges that George Santos stole from them. He defrauded them. They were victims of his scheme. And that's one of the things that's a little bit different. I mean, we've talked in the past about the Trump indictments or the various investigations in that context. In this context, we don't have our normal left versus right, Democrat versus Republican kind of partisan lens. In essence, George Santos stole primarily from Nassau County Republicans. Those are the people who were most directly defrauded if these allegations are true. And so in that context, it's not surprising that a supporter who thinks that they're genuinely supporting a genuine campaign would turn around and say, no, you didn't actually use my money the way you promised me you were going to. You used it for your personal ends.
Professor Sample, just going over again for our viewers the indictment: 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, 1 count of theft of public funds, 2 counts of making materially false statements to the House of Representatives. Now, Carolyn said that there was a question about a speedy trial, and they said no. We know the next court date is June 30th. When you look at these counts, and then also, can you fill us in on the process, what we expect next, and then also as far as punishment if found guilty of, you know, which could carry the most time? We know the 20 years. I know that's a loaded question, but can you take us a little bit through the process?
Sure, absolutely, Dana. And I think what is likely to happen is that Santos and his attorneys are going to want to extend the game, sort of slow down the game clock, if you will, because the only leverage that he has at this point is time. And in theory, the leverage that he might have in a plea bargain scenario would be the offer to resign. Maybe he'll be able to get something by way of a reduction from the prosecutors if he can package a resignation from Congress with it. So I suspect that in the next stages, we're going to see the process of justice slow down, both because he's entitled to due process and because he will want it to slow down. But I think that the most serious of these charges from the standpoint of potential consequences are the money laundering charges. I mean, the money laundering charges individually could carry up to 5 years. Now, we've been throwing around, and certainly it is accurate to say that he could face up to 20 years of incarceration if he were convicted on all of these charges. It's unlikely that he's going to face 20 years in prison, even if this were to go to trial, and even if you were to get a conviction on all of them, given the lack of criminal history or the relative lack of criminal history here. But let's be clear, the fact that money laundering charges are included, and those are charges that federal prosecutors most typically bring in association with drug crime cases, those carry significant penalties, and he is likely facing at least some serious time of incarceration in federal prison. And that is going to be, I mean, even apart from political ramifications, he's going to have to be balancing his personal interest in liberty against this idea of his political career, which realistically is effectively over now. It's not technically over, it's not legally over. Effectively, there's no way in the world George Santos is in office in January of 2025.
Taking advantage of your constitutional, specifically background in the office holding, he can go back, correct? Sit in Congress, not on any committees, has not been, right? But what is his role now?
That's a great question.
Or his advantages, right? His responsibilities to his constituents. How does he carry it out?
One advantage he has by maintaining his position is that he has it as leverage for plea bargaining. Another advantage is he continues to get paid. And I suspect that as legal bills mount up, he's going to need that income quite likely. So that's an advantage. You know, there is precedent, including precedent right here in New York for, you know, criminally indicted members of Congress. And I'm thinking of a couple of just recent examples in the Congress over the last few years that have gotten a lot of attention. You know, Duncan Hunter, a Republican from California, did not resign until after pleading guilty to stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions. Chris Collins from right here in New York State was indicted in 2018, and he resigned before he pleaded guilty to criminal charges. There have been a couple others, and of course, also prominently here in the New York metro area, Senator Bob Menendez, who was famously indicted, and the jury the case went to trial, and the jury ended up in a mistrial. And so he's now the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, which is to show that it's a sad statement, perhaps, but we have a lot of precedent, a sort of standard operating procedure for members of Congress facing criminal charges. And I suspect that Santos will try and use that to his advantage.
You know, Professor, you raised the specter of a plea bargain. I wonder, given the fact that he's such a large level of notoriety and he's become such a national figure, if you think that the prosecutors in this case, there's so many of them, it's not only federal prosecutors, but also the Nassau County District Attorney was involved in this. Do you think the idea of a plea bargain is something real that the prosecutors would even consider just to get rid of him?
It's an excellent question, Marcia, and I don't know what's in their mind. I don't want to speculate to that, but I will say that it's become the norm in criminal prosecutions, as the two of you know from vast experience, that very, very rare these days is the actual criminal trial. I mean, it's what we think about from the movies and television and occasionally from real life, but the vast, vast majority of criminal cases in America these days, including financial crimes cases, are ultimately resolved through a plea bargain. And so I think the prosecutors would be willing to take a win. They would, I'm sure they have resource allocation issues that they'd rather not go to trial. If they can get a significant win and not have to go through those expenditures, I suspect they'll take that win and they'll celebrate it.
But could he avoid going to jail at all if he takes a plea bargain and says, okay, I resign?
I highly, highly doubt it. I think that the charges here and the speed of the investigation speaking to the volume of evidence that they must have. And you referenced earlier the sort of tantalizing detail that we don't know yet, the sort of piece of the puzzle that is not spelled out in the indictment is really in those two false statements charges where he's alleged to have made false statements to the House. That's $700,000, that's $750,000 that he ostensibly loaned himself. If, as the allegations in the indictment spell out, assuming that the allegations are correct, then there is a serious and potentially consequential detail that is yet to be revealed. And that's where that $750,000 came from, because that could lead to yet further charges. This may be the tip of the iceberg, not the entire iceberg itself.
What do you, the $500,000 bond set, when you heard that figure, Jim, what did you think?
It sounds relatively standard. I mean, I think that someone with this notoriety, it's especially given the surrendering of the passport. I mean, it's unlikely that George Santos is going to be able to sort of disappear and become a fugitive from justice. At this point, he's one of the more recognizable figures in the country, not necessarily for great reasons, but I think that, that secures him returning to court. And if he were somehow not to return to court on June 30th, then I think that, we'd be talking about getting Interpol involved.
Professor, isn't there usually a cash alternative, and usually in a bond of $500,000, maybe he'd have to put up $50,000, a 10% cash alternative?
Yeah, I suspect, I don't know how they structured this one, but there are, as you know, all sorts of bond brokers out there that, bail bond, et cetera, who deal in those kinds of transactions. And so whether they actually put up $500,000 in cash or whether they put up the $50,000 and then got a bond broker to put up the remaining $400,000. I don't know the answer to that, but either way, he's got every incentive in the world to not violate that bond.
The one thing I also wanted to follow up, I'm sorry, Dana.
No, go ahead.
Was that one of the things that startled me was the decision that he made to file for unemployment while he was collecting $120,000 in salary. And I wonder if that would be the kind of thing that would enrage a jury of people who thought that that money should have gone to people who lost their jobs during COVID.
Absolutely. I mean, it's stealing. It's essentially theft from the taxpayer. And what's even more astonishing, not that we sort of we're trafficking in layers of astonishment at this point, but Santos is the sponsor. He's one of the co-sponsors of a bill in Congress involving going after fraudulently obtained COVID relief funds. The idea that you would sponsor legislation while you yourself allegedly were engaged in the actual underlying fraud that is the target of the legislation speaks, and I'm not a psychologist, nor will I pretend to be, it speaks to a level of cognitive dissonance and a disconnect that it's hard to fathom. And absolutely, I agree that a jury hearing that a guy making $120,000 in Florida was applying for COVID unemployment money to the tune of $24,000 in New York, that's not the kind of fact you want a jury having in their minds when they go to deliberate.
Also, I think we could throw in there, Jim, alleged narcissism as well. We touched a little bit on the political ramifications. The Speaker, McCarthy, other people have started speaking today, both senators and representatives. Can you talk about that impact? And maybe, before some of them were couched a little bit over the first few months of all the accusations of lying, but already today some have come out with much stronger language.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you saw another one of the freshman congressmen from Long Island, Nick LaLota, use the word loser today to describe Santos. I mean, that's his fellow New York Republican Party Congress member using that particular word. That's pretty remarkable. The question in Congress, as the two of you know, is so complicated by the narrow majority that the Republican Party has. And last week during the debt ceiling vote, it's almost as if, and we can kind of reverse engineer and look back through Monday morning quarterbacking, Santos on the debt ceiling vote waited and cast his vote at the very, very end, almost as though, looking back at that now, almost as though it was a reminder of just how much Kevin McCarthy, who needed Santos's vote to become speaker, who barely has a majority, and McCarthy needed that vote to get the debt ceiling proposal that the House Republicans are at least floating for now. And so I think that the idea of getting a 2/3 majority in Congress to vote to expel Santos, I think if these charges are real, there's not much question that it would be justified, but that's not going to be the only question. People are going to be thinking about their own self-interest as well. And so you've seen Speaker McCarthy already today say, well, we have an innocent until proven guilty presumption in this country, which we certainly do. That being said, here Santos is in such a situation that even some members of his own party are, as you point out, criticizing him, abandoning him. It's hard to see a path forward, but I suspect that he's going to try and cling to the continuation of his position for as long as possible, given that he knows that people like Kevin McCarthy really, truly need him. And the idea of a compromised George Santos is more attractive to Speaker McCarthy than the possibility that that seat will go to a Democrat after a special election.
But, Professor, as you raised the issue of the debt ceiling, Kevin McCarthy has a very diverse group of people in his conference, and not all of them agree with him some of them are more conservative than others. And he needs George Santos's vote as we approach the debt ceiling expiration in 3 weeks. So is it sort of enlightened self-interest on Kevin McCarthy's part to keep him in the fold temporarily because he needs this vote? This vote is really critical to him in keeping power in Washington.
I think you're the political analyst, and for a reason, you know these things as well as anyone, Marcia, but I think that's masterful analysis right there. I mean, Machiavelli tells us that, that all politics is about strategic power and the maintenance and protection and accumulation of power. McCarthy views George Santos through his own instrumental lens. He is a pawn in a larger game from the perspective of the fellow members of his party in Congress, and especially from the members who need his support. It's not surprising to see someone like Mitt Romney say Santos should resign, because as you point out, that's a completely different wing of the Republican Party, right? So when you see Kevin McCarthy say, well, innocent until proven guilty, there's a self-interest there for sure.
But when you see Tony Gonzalez of Texas saying he should resign, actually be expelled, and you see Mike Lawler from upstate saying he should be expelled or resign, I think that takes on a different weight.
Absolutely it does. And they'll be, just as there are on votes for legislation or on votes for speaker, there is, I guarantee you, behind the scenes in Congress, a whipping of the vote, so to speak, going on and determining how many votes. We're not going to see that in public right now, but there is, without a doubt, an analysis internally of how many votes there are to expel him and how many votes there are not. And I suspect that certainly, in terms of the impact, and you asked Carolina about this earlier today, in terms of the impact, the delta, the difference between where we are right now and where we were 24 hours ago, it's hard to measure, but it exists, and there is a difference. And today has definitely moved the needle.
Perspective also, we spoke with you last after the former President Donald Trump was indicted by the Manhattan District Attorney of 34 counts, I believe, and here we are speaking about a New York congressman indicted 13 counts, federal charges, just whiplash history happening here. Professor Sample, just on your campus, as you speak with your students, as you big picture, what do you say? What are you thinking? Where are we as a nation and government?
hard question. Where are we as a nation? I mean, the one you didn't mention is obvious, and certainly we're all aware of it, is just yesterday. Just yesterday, the former president of the United States was found liable for, among other things, sexual abuse.
Of course.
And he remains the leading candidate for nomination for one of the major parties in America. So, you know, there's no celebrating, and there shouldn't be any celebrating of any of these things in terms of the fact of them existing. But maybe there is cause for a belief in the system of justice. There is a reason to have faith in the rule of law, and to have faith in the process of actually having to show the evidence and trying cases based on evidence and law as opposed to based on just public opinion. The court of public opinion is extremely important, but I would use the analogy, and you know, the three of us spoke during the period between the election and inauguration back 14, 15, 16 months ago. If you think about that period, the claims that were being alleged in the public sphere fell apart when they were advanced or attempted to be advanced in the courtroom sphere, where the law and the facts and the evidence really get tested. And, you know, we are testing the guardrails of our democracy more than would be optimal. It's not a great idea, even if you have sound guardrails, to keep banging into them. That's not good driving. And at some point, the guardrails, you know, let's hope this doesn't happen, might falter.
Jim
I'll let you go.
Sample, thank you, Hofstra University. Let's go back to